UK and tell us your journey, into being a psychiatry. And I'm sure, when it comes to cultural psychiatry, you know so much because you've practiced psychiatry in Nigeria and you're also practicing in the UK. So you have so much experiences. You have so many things to talk to us today about children's mental health. So the floor is open to you, Dr. Fikaya.
Oh, thank you, Sean.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
for inviting me to this show. So my name is Dr. Fikayo Manua, also known as Fiki. Um, so yes, as Sean said, I think I start with the whole background. So I did my medical school back in Lagos, University of Lagos, where I finished in the early 2000s. Anyway,
2007.
yes, around that time. Yeah, I didn't want to show my age. Then I went into residency. I'd always known I wanted to do psychiatry. So I think in my yearbook, I was reading that what do you see yourself in 10 years? And I did say I wanted to be a psychiatrist. So yeah, I did my training in the Federal Neuropsychiatric Hospital, Yaba, which a lot of people know as Yaba Left, where I did train, finished, then went to, started in Bagada as the General Hospital Bagada, where I worked as a consultant before moving to the UK. So when I came to the UK, I first started as what we call special staff grade doctors, where I worked as a specialty doctor, then an associate specialist. During this time, I think I'd written my exams. I was not really sure where the pathway was, but I had a consultant who had said it would advise to go back into training to become a specialist here, recognized specialist, which I did, which I'm very thankful I listened to. It was a bit of work, but able to get there. Now working as a consultant in child and adolescent mental health, which I've done since I moved into the country, and it's not been too bad.
So you would say you've been a CAM specialist and consultant since 2018. You started, working in the UK
Yeah,
2018. That's
yeah.
7 years now. And then with your training, when did you enter training in Nigeria?
2011. Yeah, 2011.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's 14 years.
Yeah, yeah, actually more than 14 years because it was January, well, first week in January. So we had about, yeah,
Wow.
almost 14. Oh God, that's
14 years.
okay. I think I've never really thought about it. Yeah, 14 and a half years in psychiatry. Yeah, but
Oh,
it's one of those things that I think for me, it's if you like psychiatry, then it's not, it doesn't feel that long actually.
wow, that's a long time,
It's a long
That's a
time.
long time. And some people be like, oh, I don't want to do school anymore. Some people will still parcus you, ask you questions, having that time to also write exams. It's a lot of sacrifice,
Mm.
from your own hand. And I'm glad you're the one here today. I'm so happy, Dr. Fiki. You've done so much, even in psychiatry for we trainees. I remember one of those days that you used to teach us about interviews and all that. You
Mm.
one of those days you even brought out your own scores. You were teaching us. You've done so much, not just only in Nigeria, also for some of us currently in training. So I am so grateful. Thanks so much for the lives you've impacted, Dr.
Well, thank you.
Fikayo.
It's actually good to hear that because people say that. Because I think I would use the background of where I was, and yeah, but we had one of the consultants. He's a consultant now, but then he was a senior registrar. Where because I trained in what we call a mono center, so we were more service based. Exam rates, pass rates was not really fantastic. So we got
Hmm.
together. He actually pulled people together, was teaching them every week, no extra
Wow.
cost to him, and the pass rate did increase. So I think that became the Yaba culture because I know when people come, people are like, oh, if you said this to me, so
Hmm.
I'm like, really, it's free information. I think for me, it's how I say it's free information. We do need
Wow.
it's really migration is hard. I would say
Hmm.
migration is really hard. So it's best
Wow.
to bring people together. Create your own bubble, create your own
Hmm.
system because a lot of people who are coming who are struggling, they don't know the right path. I had a consultant when I came in who it was his BAME, and he's also BAME, and he was like, whether because where I moved to initially was Somerset, which the most diverse place then was 90% white British, and it was like,
Wow.
we're immigrants, and he pulled me through. He was one that took me through the steps. He's like, you write the exams, do this. He gave me he did do a timeline for me, and I also fortunately I had my Yaba people, and yeah, it was good. And I think when I hear people say, oh, you've impacted on me, I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
by the way, I'm very happy I'm
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. And I remember that it was not just only my sets, 2023 interview set for Royal College. You also did that previously with one other
Mm,
doctor. Thank you so much. Some of us pull through,
mm,
not because we know anything, but because people helped us. And
mm,
that's what I tell people in the UK or wherever, we are people helped by God and men.
yeah.
You see, you can't take away that place of men helping
Mm,
us or helping one
mhm,
to achieve all that we want to achieve. Because sometimes, imagine, okay, you've done psychiatry in Nigeria, you know all the ICDs, but sometimes what they're asking for is not just only the ICDs, they're asking for, they want to see the way you communicate, they want to hear you talk, they
mhm,
want to hear you, empathize with the patient, they want to hear certain things. And that's why, as you know, there are people who have already become consultants in Nigeria. And when they come to appear for this exam, some of them don't do well at
mm,
first sitting,
mhm,
not because they don't know it. When we even talk about knowledge, they are excellent,
mm,
but because there's an approach, so there's a system. So thank you for taking us through the system, Dr. Fikayo. So
mm.
I'm so grateful. Thank you. I'm one of the lives you've impacted. And
Oh,
so you just thank you so much. So just for us to go, straight into what we have today. So can we'll be talking about children's mental health, with regards to migration. There are times that people just, come into the or just travel out and they just tell their children it's for a better life. And sometimes when the children now get to that better life in quotes, they become confused. Something happens in their brains. There's a lot of shift that goes on in their brains, and they can't even understand, is this the better life? For instance, some of them had maybe multiple cars whilst back at home or back at home, and then they come here, there is no car, there is no there's no big house, maybe for people in the UK, or they have to scot with people for the first few months, and before you know it, their brains, become, damaged in a subtle way. And we just think, oh, it's just for a while, but that has laid a foundation. That has laid foundation for something, a disruptive moment. We all have disruptive moments in life, but we are just tying this down to children's mental health with regards to migration. Can you just, talk about talk about this, and then we would go on, into other things.
no worries. I think I'm going to pick up on what you just said, and I think it's more of it's more for me. It's a joke. So, as you said, some children have never really they're coming here. Some parents don't even tell them. They don't tell them they are going traveling until that day. They're traveling because they don't want the children to say. To be honest, I will never lie. Someone was talking about a child who in school, mom had said, "Oh, don't tell anything that happens in the house stays at home," and goes to school and says, "My mommy said that I shouldn't tell you, but let me tell you what's going on in our house," which happens. So sometimes I understand the parents' want of that. But going back to where you say that they've had cars. So my kids, I call my kids trust fund babies or nepo babies because they're sport children. And this was even on holiday. And so this was holiday. We left to go. Where was this actually? Yes, it was. She had traveled with her. I think we went to. We actually came some years. I can't remember when it was. This was while we were still in Nigeria. And we stayed with Greek. It was Wales actually because my brother was schooling there. So it was. She used to go. She pick up the phone. She was like about 5, 6. My daughter is actually a diva, and she just calls and says, "Oh, can we go into number 2 Casmaston Street, please? We're stopping the taxi." So for the first few weeks where she came for holiday. She was with my mom and my brother. So they used to take taxis around. Wales was cheap. Obviously, it was cheaper than 3 of them entering a bus. So she now went to her other grandma who was in London, and they had to take a bus. At some point, she stopped her grandma and said, "I'm not going anywhere again. Every day, bus, bus, bus. Every day, train, train, train." As she couldn't just understand it. And the same way as I said, my daughter is a sports child. Went to was in New York, and she was like, "Why is it dirty? Everywhere's dirty. Like, why is this whole place dirty? The train is dirty. Everybody's dirty." I was like, "Shh, shh." So yeah. So going back to that is you think about a lot of children who have, as you said, they're coming from big houses, parents who have had mates. It's almost everybody who has a maid in Nigeria, almost everybody who has a driver, they have their own personal cars. Not because they're quite well to do. An average person in Nigeria would be able to afford that because it's cheap, labor is cheap.
Yeah.
Most of the houses are in suite. Then you come here. where out depends on where you live. And yes, if you're living outside London and all these areas where it's relatively cheap, you can get maybe a 3 bedroom, one bath, or maybe 1.5 baths. So a
Yeah.
child who is used to having their own bathroom all of a sudden is sharing a bath. And sometimes, if you're in London, two bed. And you said sometimes you have to squat, especially with the Jackpot era. When we came, it was still easy to get a, it was still easy to get a house. But with the Jackpot era, especially people who came with the this when they were doing the masters, a lot of people had to squat. I know people who have had to squat for 3 months in people's houses. So literally, a family who has had their own space, all of a sudden, are sharing one room. So daddy, mommy, and two children are sharing a one room. Or they're in a family's house, or so after a while, it becomes everybody's irritable, everybody's on eggshells. It's really hard, and we don't have these conversations, as you said, with the kids about relocation. So they're living what they know. They're living a structure. They're living their best friends. As you said, somebody doesn't know. And it has to happen then. You just wake up with kids who come back one day and say, oh, I didn't see this person again. And even before we left, we didn't see this person again in school. And when we asked after 1 week, oh, they've traveled. To let's not lie, we even have friends who've traveled and we didn't know, and we were like trying to reach them, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I didn't want to tell you we've traveled. So you can imagine that on their children who have left their best friends, now moving to a place. Some of them come, usually in depends on what area you are, have to stay at home for 2 to 3 months before they get out of school.
Yeah.
They have to go back a year. It's a different, some different children. I know somebody who's had to go back 2 years because, yeah, because it's it's based on age. So a November baby or a September baby, actually late November or December baby who used to go to who was used to being in year 5 or something or year 6, they're taking them back 1 year because, well, you did not meet the cutoff line, which is August 31st or September 1st or 2nd. So they have to go back a whole year. It's a lot. Sometimes you go to a city where you don't have a lot of people who look like you. When we moved, I said this. I was in Somerset, where the most diverse place then was 96% white British. But I think so. Unfortunately, I'll say fortunately-ish, it was one of those relative were to do. So my children were seen as exotic, oh, we're from here, so they had people who would knock on the door, and it was like in a small area, knock on the door and say, please, can you come out to play? Or you have some people where they go to areas where they would egg them. I had a colleague who said he moved also years ago where they would egg their houses. They would call them black monkeys, so we don't talk about this. And yeah, it's a lot for the children. If it's hard, I think, imagine if it's hard for us as adults to adapt into a whole new system. We come during winter. I've had to come here. I think I did my PLAB in December 1 year. Yeah, December. It was December when I did my PLAB 2. So I did in January. So December to January. And one day I just literally just walk on the road. I was walking. I slipped on the ice. I fell and I started crying. And I was only supposed to be going back home. So we don't think about that. It's yes, we're trying to bring them for a better life, but we're not thinking of. So when I say we're not thinking, people don't sit down, and this is me in hindsight. Yes, my children knew we're moving, but did I sit down with them to get their views? Did I sit down with them to because you're also apart from coming here, you're coming here to adjust to a new system. You're trying to, so you're the parent as well. You're on survival mode. It takes about 5 years to settle.
Very
To
true.
feel so in that 5 years, do we have that patience, and not even the patience, even I would say the grace, because it's a lot to be able to sit down with this child to say, oh my god, how are you going, how are you doing, how are you genuinely doing? Because we just assume, oh, they're kids, they're going to adopt, and that's what everybody says, they're children, they'll adapt. No, it's not. It's a huge I think for them it's probably 10 times worse, because they really can't go to you, and your parents are on the edge. You're tired, you're irritable, you're trying to even understand yourself, and you don't even see the kids. So I think, as much as it's a good thing, which it is a good thing, I will not lie to you, it's a good thing bringing the kids into another, to bring them a better life. But in the long stay, and and I think we know it subconsciously, because there's this prayer we always pray that, as I'm bringing you to this new country, may I not regret it. uh, but at the end of the day, are we putting in things in place so that we don't regret it?
Thank you so much, Dr. Fikayo. That struck me. Are we really putting things in place so we don't regret it? I remembered in 1991, I was 5 years old. At the time, I was five going to six. February, can't remember the exact dates. My dad traveled out. It was that day I think I got to know, but that was a very long time ago. We had people come into the house to pray for my dad, to pray with him, and then we headed off to the airport. I remember the particular woman, a neighbor, she cried, she wept because my dad was traveling. And she, maybe, being an adult, she understood that she might not see him for a while.
Mm,
And um, I didn't, well, that traveled, and I never knew we would not come back home up until like almost 19 years after. When it came back, I was 24 years old, going to 25, 6 months, 24 years and a half, going to 25. It was a totally strange event having a father at home, having a dad present. I was in medical school, second year medical school. It was just strange. I
mm,
lived alone without any man,
mm,
father, telling me, don't do this. All
mm,
I've had is mom being around, people being around, teaching me, telling me what to do,
mm,
not a father. I won't really go much into that. Sometimes we don't understand what that means. I
mm.
never saw him. I never saw him like for almost 19 years, from five to almost 25. You know, I wouldn't go into some of the things, that might have happened in the sense that, but I'm just grateful, like I won't go into I won't go that's not for today, so that we can just concentrate. And want to say is that sometimes, for female children,
Mm,
because that maybe because perhaps their fathers were not present at that time, they seek for affirmation
mm.
elsewhere.
Yes.
So, but I think we will just go into, like you've talked about, what do we put in place to ensure that they have smooth ride abroad or smooth stay abroad? May we not regret it. But sometimes I think, before the internet went off, you talked about parents must have, maybe, or whether whether mom or dad or anyone, they might have borrowed so much money, and
Mm.
when they come in, they try to settle back, so they may not really take note of something. So can you just go on from there, Dr. Fikayo?
Yes. Okay. Obviously, I'm not. I'm definitely a psychiatrist, so I have to talk on what you just said. And the growing up, what you said was a lot of people's reality where dad or mom left and they don't see their parents. Some people actually never saw their parents, and it's really. I think obviously for us is where everybody's moving with a lot of people are moving with the family. People were going on 6 months visiting visa, and we're trying to get papers. And I have people who till their parents died never got their visas. We had people who, after 25 years, the parents were deported with nothing, and they come back and it's a
True.
lot. It's a lot where for the parents, it's a lot for the children. We have people who their parents actually moved abroad. Daddy eventually married somebody else. You couldn't talk to dad. Where it's a different. I think that is a different type of migration or the impact of migration on children. And I think maybe we're a bit more fortunate. This I'm not sure if I'll use the word, but I think people are more aware. I think I'll use that word. They're more aware
Yeah.
of the repercussions of that. And I think women are saying, do you know what? Either we slog this thing out together or let's just stay here together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, as I said, that's probably another story for another day, And as I said, I'm very glad that things turn out well for you. It's not everybody has your success story. And, whenever I hear a story, I'm like, wow, she has done a lot.
Yeah.
Going
Thank
back to what you said, one of the things that when I said trying to put things into places, part of the things of where we come in here, as I said, it's really hard for the parents themselves. I'll give an example of people moving in September. No, September's still a good month. October, November, where it's dark. It gets dark at 4 o'clock. November is the worst month. I believe November is the worst month in this country. Whereas 4 o'clock is dark.
you.
It's cold, it's wet, it's you're sad. There is nothing anybody can tell you. It's that seasonal depression that comes with being there. So now imagine we are, let's not lie, we are probably the top 10 or top 15, I don't know how people put it, but top 20% of people in the the country, because we're doctors, no matter how much we whinge, no matter how much we whinge, we're able to pay our bills with our salary. We have the opportunity of extra shifts. People are coming in as students where they've
Hmm.
moved everything. They have bills to pay, because at the end of the day, you have to pay your school fees.
Hmm.
People are collecting loans. You should hear what is going on. People are collecting loans at some ridiculous rate just to even to do the, what's that word called? But basically, but just just to pay off. And sometimes they come in where they're trying to also settle into the system.
Dr. Fikayo, sorry to interrupt you. I'm just looking at the age group of the people you're talking about. Bear
Mm,
in mind, to the audience, some can be 16, 17.
mhm.
Okay, you can continue. So not
Yes.
just adults coming for
Oh no,
masters.
no. So yes, I think maybe we should talk about that, because I think
Yeah.
one of the things, I just assume that most of the people are are Nigerians. But when we say masters, we're talking about people who have children, and we have people who I someone told me of a family where dad was in his 60s. No, not 60s. He was almost 60. He had finished. He had retired. He had retired because he was one of those people that started university. Sorry, started school early, not
Yeah.
school, work early. So I started working at the age of
Mm.
18. So he was, is it 20, 35 years? You worked
Yeah.
35 years. So you can imagine he was still quite youngish.
Wow.
Sold his property. The kids, as you said, were 16, 17. And she was like, she advised against it, but they came, and it was a lot. And
Hmm.
this was a grown man who used to cry every day. He's saying that, if I wish I'd known. So there are
Hmm.
a lot of people like that. So when we say people are coming, yes, it is that much. So now imagine this person who sold everything they have. They have nothing else to go back home to, um, in that search of a better life. And you get here, you're trying to, mom is trying to, because that is a master's, and a lot of people are also very afraid of the laws. So it's 20 hours, it's 20 hours, we're going to work 20 hours, which basically really doesn't give you much. So mom probably has to take up the responsibility, or one
Yeah.
parent, whichever parent is not working, has to take up the responsibility, working 16 to 18-hour shift, about 6 to 7 days a week. I know someone who used to do that, 16-hour shifts,
Hmm.
6 days a week. So where's the time for the kids? You come back home, you just want to lie down and sleep. You don't even want to talk to anybody. So
Yeah.
there would parents will come here and provide the basic. I will give you food, I will give you shelter. Parents
Hmm.
are they are constantly in some debt or the other, because
Hmm.
there's a lot of, we need to pay the bills, we need to pay this. It's the
Hmm.
math isn't mathing. So you're having to deal with all of that. And you have a 13, 14-year old who is at home. Sometimes you can imagine you have a 13, 14, 15-year old who has younger ones. So that person has to step up. So you're going to have to cook for the siblings. You have to do that. Now imagine a child who was used to having Auntie Mary that would come back from school. Auntie Mary, as in even Auntie Mary and the driver, as you're coming out of school, Auntie Mary is holding your bag, which is not,
Hmm.
that. Auntie Mary is carrying your bag from your
Hmm.
car. So it's a lot. And, yes, some of these kids, well, I brought you here for a better, and we say this, as in too
Hmm.
much. I remember something I learned from my mother: to whom much is given, much is expected, and that is because I said so is a very good thing. So yes, it does happen, and we're not thinking about it, as you said, the impact on the kids. We're not asking them, how are you managing in school. So we just realize the kids get quieter.
Hmm.
They don't say anything. They just continue. They keep slugging it because
Hmm.
they're trying to understand. Mom is talking about how she needs to pay 15,000 in the next few months or the next few weeks.
Hmm.
Are you going to come and tell mommy that, please, there's one boy that is poking me with his pen? Or are you going to come and tell me that, oh, are you going to come and tell mom that, I'm not sure that I understand what's going on. Then we now start with the typical African parent is, oh, you're not reading well. We're going to put you in Kumon. We're going to put you lessons. You need to go to get into the grammar school because I cannot allow you. So there's now that pressure on you to do very well. But Nigeria, yes, we used to have lesson teacher. Lesson teacher used to come to your house. You literally just sit down there. Lesson teacher would put you through and everything. You understood what was going on. Sometimes we sometimes are like, oh, this child is not doing well. Let me get them a nice lesson teacher from Nigeria. But
Hmm.
my kids are fortunately able to tell me that, mom, that it's different. It's a different structure. It's a
Hmm.
different pattern, from what we get. So they're giving your lesson teacher is telling them something that is not basically what it is. As much as we say it's the same system or same structure, it's very different. how many people can actually afford to pay that 25, 30 pounds per hour? And it's just for an hour, sometimes as much as 50 pounds.
Hmm.
So it's cheap. That 50 pounds will get you a whole month for different subjects in Nigeria. So it's a different, so there's a lot of confusion that continues to happen for this young child who is trying to settle into a system they're not they're not very aware of. And kids are vulnerable. They're quite vulnerable. So sometimes you see that as they gravitate towards other people. They gravitate towards people who are not necessarily the best. They also sometimes gravitate online, and so when I say they're vulnerable for grooming. They're vulnerable to mental health problems. They're vulnerable to just not settling, which we never really understand. They've left grandma, who used to come and pick them up every weekend, or grandma that will come and spend 2, 3 months in their house. Even if grandma comes now, they have to give a room up for grandma. So really, they don't really want grandma to come because grandma is taking them, so they have to sleep in the parlor because it's a 2 bedroom and everything. So they leave their cousins. They leave. It's a lot. It's a lot for young children.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fikayo. As you talked about, the children, at some point they will become groomed. Okay, let me just, I remembered when I had my first child, I was living in London at the time, 2017. And around that period, there were lots of stabbings.
Mm.
I was unwell. I was not settled. Sometimes 5 a.m., I'll start praying, God, let there be no news today.
Mhm.
So imagine a child who has just, because at that time I was vulnerable.
Mm.
I just a child and constant news. That was the constant news. I would not repeat the word again. But imagine a child, coming in or who has just come in, hearing that kind of news. It's enough to destabilize that child. It's enough to throw that child off balance. It's enough to affect that child.
Mm.
But so is either it affects the child most time negatively, and then at other times positively. The child may now say, okay, maybe I wouldn't do this. Okay, but then even for innocent children have been taken away, whether they were never involved in gangs or anything, they've been taken away because they were just innocent. Some people did not, they were naive, like you said initially, they were not aware, so perhaps they've come into a community where they did not even understand this awareness you're talking about, situational awareness. These are children you should not mingle with. But
Mm.
children being children, they want to talk to people. And then before you know it, I remembered around that period, they did a video then in London where they talked about, children being targeted. They know that African children, it can happen to everyone, but I'm just saying, like, let's just talk about us. They know that the parent would go work for money, they want to send money home, they are always working all round. So they know they are smart, you know, the same whether anybody, it could be any color, they know. And then they would target those children because they know that at night their parents will work around the clock. You talked about someone having to work 16 hours for 7 days, 6 to 7 days. They know when they are off. They know when they will come back. They know because they want to achieve an agenda. Before you know it, they'll start giving those children drugs. And they also want to feel among because they don't really understand why people, would not even talk to them. They don't even understand isolation. They want to feel among, they want to understand what's going on. And then they try things. And before you know it, there is one mental health breakdown or the other. Before you know it, that better life would become prison sentence. And these are realities that these are realities. I remember reading a news one time, a migrant, I think, their own child had to buy them. It's a lot, but I would not just go into that. So I
Mm.
would allow you, Dr. Fikai, to talk more about, what are the signs that, parent can watch out for. And should parents keep quiet when they notice anything, regards to the children's mental health? It's easy to notice a child vomiting.
Mm.
The child is unwell. But when it comes to mental health, maybe because we want to deny some things, so we may decide to sweep it under, or we may decide to just let things be. I believe my child we'll be fine in Jesus' name. Yes, we believe so as well. But can you just talk more about this? And I will remind you, I know I've said so
Mm.
many things within this few space of time. Yes.
Yes, I think one of the things, which is what you said, is about parents noticing things. So for you to be able to notice things, to be honest, you need to be present.
Hmm.
We are, we have people who are working as have two parents who are usually working much, so it's at least one person be parent be present. Sometimes it's just about my obviously I'm not obviously, but I'm here. My kids, their dad is back home and shuttles as much as fortunately I'm able to have one grandparent or the other being around, so there's always someone around. But some days it's just that whole, do you know what? I'm not in the
Yeah.
mood, but that 15, 20 minutes, just come lie down on my bed with me. I insist on it. Come lie down. Come, come, come.
Yeah.
They're like, mom, because obviously my kids are older. I have a 17 and 16-year-old. So I get the eye roll and all of that. But being present enough, it's not, when I even say being present enough to your child tell you anything.
Hmm.
Sometimes I'll say this, I hope my daughter doesn't hear this, but sometimes she's telling me things and I'm like, I'm not your friend. As in, gosh, don't tell me this, but she tells me things about her friends, just listen, who's your friend, who's this person, who's that person, just wanting to know, what, and the children want to talk, so they'll give you the gist about this person, what this person has done, what this person has not done. So just listen, being present enough to listen, giving them that time to listen. Sometimes just dropping your phone and doing that. Sometimes, yes, as we say, is as you're working is hard. Even one day, just taking a day off and say, okay, let's even go somewhere. Let's go to Nando's. Let's go shopping. Let's go, just taking them that time out for that. Then for signs, I think as you said, well, a lot of us are not. I don't think parents sometimes deny, they're just not aware. We're as Africans, I will talk about working in Yaba. I said talk about cultural differences. If I tell you that a person has come to Yaba, I can assure you that they've gone to either church or to the imam. They've gone what is
Hmm.
Juju labor. So people come in with severe mental health problems. But
Hmm.
we know that 1 in 4 people do have mental health problems. So that when we say so the severe, we only recognize the severe mental health problem. And for us, with the first thing they will tell you if someone is severely unwell, like things like schizophrenia, they will tell you, or even severe depression with psychosis, they will tell you, oh, it's drugs. Especially the person is young. The first thing they say is drugs. Some of these children probably never did drugs, but it's just that level of awareness. So you notice your child is a bit more quiet. Oh, as a teenager, you're moody, you're moody. It's not moodiness. Sometimes it's just a matter of the person. The child might not be in mood. So sometimes it's just being quite aware of, okay, even if it's Google search, chat, what am I even saying? ChatGPT now is fantastic. All you need to put it there is, okay, what are the signs? Um, and I want to be more, just putting things like, I want to be more aware of children mental health things. So it will tell you things to watch out for. So things like a child being more sullen, they're just sitting down, not talking to people, they're in their room more. Yes, some of these things are typical teenage behaviors because I have parents who say, I wasn't sure if it was typical teenage behavior or it was just this. But sometimes a child who's changing all of a sudden from wearing colors, all of a sudden is wearing black, all bright black, covering their faces, covering their arms. For me, that's usually a red flag for there's a lot of children self-harm. It's some level of learned behavior and also coping mechanisms. So when I say learned behavior, is a matter of they have kids tell them that you're feeling very low, you're feeling very sad in yourself. Sometimes it's better to feel physical pain rather than the emotional torment you're going through. And children self-harm. The number of parents are, I think I say this very casually because I've seen it so many times that it's not a bother to me. But I have parents, they, oh, my child self-harm and there's some level of panic. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's fine. What was the intent? So for a parent, that's like the fact that even self-harmed is a lot. So it's just been that awareness, sometimes even just, yes, we're parents, just actually mom barge into your daughter's room one day when she's dressing up so that you can see if there's any signs of self-harm because they usually hide it. They're, so you're always wearing trousers, you're always wearing this. Oh, do you want to buy short? Do you want to wear shorts today, or do you want to? Sometimes just things like that, where so that you don't notice when it's a bit too late. Um, Medication missing in the house. We don't Parents sometimes are not aware about things like that. All of a sudden, is you don't find it, and I lost it by that. Sometimes children stockpile. So these are the more severe things. But as I said, is a child is no longer engaging with the rest of the family. Child is not eating much or eating a bit too much. The sleep pattern has changed. They're not sleeping enough. They're not, or they're sleeping a bit too much. Things like that. Just being a bit more aware of that. The signs. crying for no reason, just starting to chairs. They're not able to express what's going on. I sometimes tell children or parents is tell the child to write. They send you messages. I'm a writer, so I'll say, you don't feel like talking to me, that's fine. Just write. Send me a text message, express how you're feeling. Girls are a bit more expressive. Boys are a lot. So for boys, you probably see they get into fights a bit more. They're punching walls, they're screaming, they're snapping, sometimes even drugs, children who've never really they've been quiet, all of a sudden you see a child smoking, this child is vaping, even using drugs. Sometimes you need to have those conversations. It's like, okay, Utia, well, you've turned to something else. Is this country I brought you to? No, is that child self-medicating? Is that child trying to feel better in themselves because of what's going on? So a few things like that.
Hmm. Thank you so much, Dr. Fekayo. As you were just talking, I just remember that sometimes even dynamics at home also, affects children.
Mm,
Imagine, a home where dad beats mom,
mm,
and we think it's okay. It's not okay. It's not okay for mom. It's not okay for the children. It's not okay for their brains. No one should be treated that way.
mm,
And I also remembered, that as you were talking about school and all that, sometimes even though we brought the children here or people brought their children here for better life, some parents don't even take note of when the children's grade begins to drop.
mm.
Perhaps these children, they were the best in Nigeria, and then when they came initially, they started well, but before you know it, their grades, declines. And sometimes we don't even know it. We don't even know the comments the teachers, must have even written about them. We don't even attend the parents' meetings in school because we are busy. What did you say, Dr. Fikaya?
Parents' Day. It's Parents' Day.
Parents' Day. Thank you. We don't even have time to attend, but we have time to quickly walk, to send money to people at home because there is a party coming up. They are sending their own children to private school, but we are not looking we're not looking after those ones. We can't even afford, perhaps let's say we can't even afford to pay £50 per hour, or
Mm,
maybe just one off. Or it's even like by the time you even calculate that £50 is like, one big amount back at home. So these are some of the subtle things, that affect children. And I remember that before we talked about and before we came on live, we talked about sometimes the words people hear, that actually demoralizes them. It's a subtle thing.
mm.
So if you can just go on from there, bullying, words, verbal abuse, any kind of abuse that could affect children
Yeah,
mentally.
yes. I was going to go back to before I do that. Let me just go back to what you were talking about parents not attending, or so even regarding this, I think also we need to understand that some parents still don't understand what's going on in the school system. They do struggle with that. Even for me, for the longest of times, they never used to say problem. It's expected. It's here. It's just expected grades, below grades, and above. So you don't even understand that. My child, did you feel even talk about it? Thinking about it is when you're doing the Oskies and the what's it called, cask, and the product. Oh, this is what is good. I'm like, let me start with what is good first. I'm not asking for that. Tell me what I can change. And that's how the system is. And a lot of kids came in during the COVID time, and you don't know until you get to GCSEs where I even had parents who were natives of this country where they'll tell you that they kept telling me that there's something wrong with my child, this not doing. They're like, oh no, he's doing well. He's expected grades, and all of a sudden, predicted grades, yeah, 10, you have a 3, and the parents are like, are you people okay? So things about that. So you can imagine that type of parent who's trying to figure out what's this one, right? What's this 3? What's 1? What's 9? Trying to understand the system, and all of a sudden you want that parent to be responsible for a child. So are they really going to know that the grades are dropping? So those are things that really, really, really affect things. Then going back to what you've asked me about words, I would say that we said let's take it in different ways. So let's talk about school, we talk about society or the community they live in, and we talk about parents. So we talk about the nuclear environment, which is really the first place people wake up for. So mommy obviously is very irritable. Dad is obviously very irritable. There's constant arguments. We know money matters. brings a lot of bickering in the house. So your child is waking up every day screaming, hearing about money. I've not done this, I've not done that. I cannot even afford to do this. Parents all are going to thrift stores. So things like that become a bother. So this child is hearing about, we left this comfortable lifestyle we had in Nigeria to come here. And they're telling you all, they're hearing all these things. At the same time, it's like, well, I brought you here to give you a better life. To whom much is expected, much is given. As in fair yakba, child. So we do that, and forgetting that, oh, obviously this is a child who's trying to struggle, and you're also putting that pressure consciously or unconsciously on this child. It does take an impact. I think can lead to things like low mood, anxiety, because the child becomes very anxious. Oh, am I making the right decision? I even want to buy. How you're like, oh, everybody. How you that time when you're in Nigeria, everybody comes out and you see that, oh, oh, my cousin or this person abroad is wearing new shoes, is wearing new clothes. Everybody is really cacked up from head to toe. You now come and here, even Primark is the it's not
The luxury.
is a luxury. So all those things do affect these children, and kids are horrible. Let's not lie; they've not mastered the art of being filtered. So this child comes to school and or even the community, and they're either wearing clothes that are a bit too big, or they're clothes that are bought on the all those strange high streets that don't have names and don't have labels, or their Nike has two ticks. That leads to another set of problems. As we said, children are mean. So a child who's coming from Africa, with a different accent, who's is an easy target. Is an easy target. Children they're packed. I think when I came here, I really didn't understand what it meant for children to settle. Their friends, especially year seven, because I think one of us year seven, year eight was really rough for them. They don't have that friendship group. They're tight packs. They're like literally a pack. So it's like you're trying to enter a new pack, and you're different. Your accent is different. Your hair is different. It's really hard. I think sometimes children who are slightly younger, they might do better because they blend somewhat better, somewhat being the
Yeah.
key word. But the ones who are going into secondary school have it rougher. So like from year 5, 6 to secondary school usually is the worst year for them because they have to be that new person in a new school, which some of them have even found they've had their friendship groups since
Yeah.
since primary school, and you're someone new. So they're vulnerable to being a target for abuse. Or you're stupid, or see your accent, and typical children. How are you?
Yeah.
How are you doing today? Children do that a lot. How are you
Yeah.
doing today?
Yeah.
And they become very conscious of how they're speaking, and all of a sudden trying to change their accent. They're trying to, or you're going outside and somebody decides to push you or decides to egg you. We've seen videos where children are fight. They come to fight because, okay, yes, they got into fight or flight, and when they're fighting, you're used to it in Nigeria that if we're fighting, it's me and you. I would, as in our fight is just one on one. But you get here, and that's okay. Let me show myself that I'm a fighter, and they're a pack of five girls that are pulling your hair, and most of us have braided hair. Our hair is braided. Um, the hair is braided, and they're pulling out their hair. So all those things really, really do affect children. As I said, there, so that also brings them. They're more vulnerable to
Hello, Dr. Fikaya.
the
Dr.
incident.
Fikaya.
Yeah.
Sorry. And the network. So you're talking about, children fighting. Yeah.
Yes. I was like, how in Nigeria, if you're doing it's your fight is one-on-one fight. But here you get into a fight with somebody, and next thing her friend is pulling your hair. The fights are not fair. We see all those videos, how the fights are not fair. All of a sudden they say, oh, this girl is beating them, and five other people join. It's something we're not used to. So even if you choose to defend yourself and show that, okay, I'll power this person, you realize that other people are actually throwing in their into the battle. So it's really hard. So all of those things are there. Then we now talk about the community. So these children have also dealing with that drama
Hmm.
in school. They now come to home, or where they're meant to be a safe space. Home is not safe because, well, you're probably sharing a room with one my brother or my sister that I never had to. If they want to go outside in the community, you're probably in all those sometimes very strange places where you can't even open the door,
Hmm.
because it's where you want to get cheap accommodation. Sometimes you get a cheap accommodation in places that are not necessarily the nicest places. So you can't go outside, or you can't do this, you can't do that. Or even the day they go outside, they see a lot of. There's some parks that you see, and you see needles, you see all the stuff of strange things where they're more vulnerable to that. So it does, for me, it's a matter of when you say, words, it's not just words. It's not just words from the home, it's words from school, words from the community,
Everywhere.
um, that can make that child very vulnerable to so many things. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fikai. I remembered one day, I was there. I took my son for football, and a child hit him and called him monkey, and immediately said, "Stop it! That's not right." That was that. I really felt bad.
Mm.
There was another occasion where, okay, when he was 4 years old, he came home one day. I was changing his brother's diapers, and he was like, "Why is the color of my hair different?" That was the first time I heard. I was like, "Yay! What should I do?" But we're able to, talk to him. God made us differently. It's okay to be different. It's fine and all that. I remembered of recent, as in last month, April, my son was playing, my eldest son was playing with someone somewhere, and the person said, "Go back to Africa." He was born here, but he's 8 years old, so now he's understanding the
Mm.
system. So my husband went to pick him from school and he saw him crying. What happened? And then he said, someone said, "Go back to Africa." I think that was the first time he heard that word.
Mm.
I've not even heard that word in a long while. I heard it a while ago, but that was the first time he was hearing it and he was crying. So we had to, deal with it. And the boy had to write a letter. He apologized. He said, "I actually meant go back home." How can you be in a particular place where you're supposed to be from 9 till 5, and then someone tells you go back home? They investigated and they saw that it was true. So he wrote a letter.
Mm.
Why did I share these experiences? That why I'm sharing this experience, that sometimes children report things at home
Mm.
and parents don't do anything. I
Mm.
remember one of my bosses, a psychiatrist, told me 2022. He said, "Justina, I never knew my children were being bullied in
Mm.
school until they were about to enter university." He said, "Because I never had time to go for their PTAs, or for their children parents' days." Himself and his wife, they're both psychiatrists. So he talks about these things openly just so that I become aware. He
Mm.
said he regretted it, that they never knew for years. For years. So sometimes, maybe the way we were brought up at home is like, "Oh, just leave it for God, just leave it."
Mm.
It's a different environment here. Before you know it, those subtle words will begin to damage those children, and they would not even see anything good in themselves. Sometimes, even teachers, yeah, would say to them, "You see, you're not good."
Mhm, mhm,
There's
mhm,
a way people say it.
mm.
And back at home, let's be truthful. Even if you are a dullard, you are loved. Even
Yes.
if you're a dullard, even if nothing good can come out from your brain or from your head, some people will speak words
Mm.
into your life
Mm.
and you will do well.
Mhm, mhm,
Whereas in this climate, once you've been labeled poor, you are not expected to rise
well,
above that
mm.
status quo.
Mm.
For instance, okay, I won't even go into personal, but there are people who will cheer you on, whether church, in the community. "Oh, you don't know math, I will teach you." Yeah, I was one times one. They are interested. People who are genuinely interested.
Mm.
They will speak words into your life. They will pray with you. They will teach you. They don't even mind paying for lesson fees for you.
Mhm, mhm,
They-
mhm.
they- you know, but it's a different environment. So we have to be careful. We have to know. Maybe Dr. Fika, you can just talk about it.
I think
Yeah.
what you're saying is very true because I do have I had one of my young people was turning 18 and he's I think in a few weeks and brought chocolate for me and mom was actually very teary that he had been with us for 14 years, that this was a child who, and the native of the land whose mom has said their school had said he wasn't going to be able to survive in a mainstream school. He wasn't going to have any of his GCSEs, and they don't even think he's going to do butcher. This is somebody he got 7 GCSEs, he's finished college, and he's hoping to become, he's has a career path now. So yeah, so some, as what you said is very, very true. It's once you have that label, Sometimes you have a child. There are things that used to happen, and I give this example of where children don't struggle to speak, or they say they speak later. I know there was a time, I don't think it happens as much now, but I know that this is a friend whose child probably is 19 now. They used to have a lot of complaints. Oh, he's not speaking well. He's not speaking right.
Selective mutism.
Not necessarily selective mutism. I think they just felt he wasn't able to cope with the language, and were thinking of, should we take that? But I think what they now found out was that children who have they're bilingual, where the different languages being spoken at home, tend to pick different things. So they mix. So they mix languages. So they just assumed, oh, this child, and so you have, sometimes one thing I have a friend say is that you have to fight for your child. For you to be in this country,
Yeah.
as a parent, you have to fight for your child. I attend Parents' Days. Fortunately, now a lot of these things are done online. Sometimes I'm very tired. I will not even lie. My children are like, Mom, this Parents' Day. I'm like, hello, Auntie, you're in A-level. What am I going to do? I said, what's my business? But that's what I think about. We have to do that because, to be honest, and I think that's also part of how we were. By GS, the only time our parents used to go for open day was primary school. By the time we got to secondary school, what's their business with you? As in, if you like fail, was the question, was the response. If you like fail. So I think we also need to, we need to change that, because
Yeah.
we grew up with our parents by open day. By secondary school, it was none of your business. My mom, to be honest, unfortunately, my mom was a teacher, or yeah, she retired as a teacher. Up until university, there was a time that she wasn't sure what my elder brother was doing. This, my brother was in university. She went round all the HODs, all the teacher, all the lecturers. Yeah.
Wow.
My the HOD said, Madam, please, do you have other children? She said yes. He said, okay.
Now focus.
Because let me tell you, okay, that I think maybe you do not have children in your other life. She said, well, other you are not the first person to tell me this. But what did that do? It took, the man did take my elder brother under his wings, and he, till my brother left, is Mr. Man, come here, come and show me, so no, but to be honest, growing back in Nigeria, most of us knew that by GS1, GS2, just by GS1, most of us were even in boarding school. So yeah, you're going to tell your parents that my first year was Ogbomosho. My parents lived in Lagos, first for that matter. Are you going to come and do open day in Ogbomosho? So by the time we got to secondary school, we were on our own, left our own devices. So sometimes maybe that's also that background we have is probably also making us not necessarily pay attention. But I think is to recognize that here you do have to fight for your children. Is who has the loudest, who makes the loudest noise, gets the most. So you can sometimes, when people say, oh, this person's child has this level of this, the parent, and you might see it on the outside, I don't even think this child is that bad, but the parents made the loudest noise. I've had, this is talking from work experience, where I've had some children being assessed with the sent to us for assessment for ADHD, and I've had kids who were secondary school, did not know their basic arithmetic, and they were in mainstream schools for secondary school, and I had to write a very long letter to say that, and I told Mom, I said, I would say this, I don't say this a lot, you need to make a complaint, because how can your child be in a mainstream school, and this is some level of learning difficulty. Anyone who is here while the child is here, you don't have to have you don't have to be ILR, you don't have to have, but the fact your child is in school, if your child is struggling, they have, by law, have to provide the most necessary the necessary recommendations for them. If a child needs to have an EHCP, there's something called the EHCP, so that's Educational Healthcare Plan. You notice your child is not able to read or write despite doing much, then just make a lot of noise. I would say that. If you have to send emails, send emails. If you have to call. So, but let your child know that you will fight for them. Your child has come back to say, oh, I was called a monkey. Don't say just keep quiet, or just we're going to address this. You're going to address this. The fact that your child sees you fighting for them, even if you sometimes, a lot of times, I don't want to do it because it's really a bother. But I found out that for my own children, when they see that, I tell them, I said, Mom is Mom is a fighter. Mom likes I can. When it comes to writing emails, I'm very good. I will write email. I will fight everybody. But sometimes even me myself. But I finish writing that email, they come back, and this was even before ChatGPT. They come back and say, please, we didn't mean that. This was even back from Nigeria, where I could, my agents, as a housing agent, one day that I would just write that letter to you. So I'll tell my children, I said, Mom will fight for you. If I can I can tell you to come back home, and I tell you that it's like there's something wrong with you. But let them know you have their back. Environment, and so as I said, all those things where they've said you've told them they're not really good. And sometimes it's having that, okay, you're struggling, you're not able to manage. Is that possible? What do you think we can do? Do I want to sit down with you for extra 1 or 2 hours every day, or maybe not every day, but maybe over the weekend? Or am I ready to do that extra shift so I can pay for this child's lessons? At the end of the day, if them feeling, even if it's one lesson every 2 weeks, the fact they feel you're able to support them with that sometimes just makes the child feel much better.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Fikayo. For some people who might be hearing fight, the fight here is not boxing. Yeah.
Mm, mm.
Should in case children
Oh,
pause this video.
oh no, no. When I say we'll fight for you, I mean mom and dad would actually they would go into
Yes,
school and
yes.
like that. Yeah, don't.
As Nigerians, when we say fight, we know
That's true. I
what
think
we
thinking about it, yeah, you already recognize that you've lived in this country so much. So when I say fight, mom is not going to shout. Mom, even if mom would probably worst case scenario when we say fight is mom is going to write an email in all capital
mean.
letters. And email
Yes,
will be all capital letters so they know how serious it is. Or having that very strong conversation with your teacher. But yeah, so mommy and daddy don't do physical fights. No.
yes, yes. Thank you so much for that clarification. And it also, also strengthens that bond between children and their
Mm,
parent. They are now able to open up to their parents. And also, we are also laying a healthy foundation for them.
mm,
Some children were brought up as avoidants, or having avoidant personalities, either naturally or based on their background. And so when we are able to confront issues, to talk about issues, we are creating healthy relationship for them, for their own children as well, a generational thing, saying that in my own house or in our own home, dad and mommy addresses issues. They
mhm,
don't avoid
mhm,
tough conversations. They
mhm,
try to resolve conflicts. They face it. They don't hide it or say, oh, people go through things. Sometimes people say, oh, people go through things, so leave them. No, people go through things. We all go through things, but let your children know that you are there for them
mhm,
and you would be able to help them.
mm,
Even if, they don't eventually do anything, you've sent that email or emails, you've addressed it, you've gone to their school to say, yeah, by the way, my son came back home with this result. I don't understand it. Can you please explain? Let them see that you are involved. You see, many times it's a system here. Back at home, parent may not be involved because people would naturally love you, love
mm,
their children, and fight for them and help them in school. But here you have to, you have to be there. You have to show up. You have to let them understand that I am interested in my child's growth. So
mm,
what's happening? I don't understand what happened. Why would you label this child? Why?
mm,
I remember, someone I remembered, okay, I won't go, okay, I wanted to say a story, but I'll change it. So somebody said, even when you go to school, mix with the bubbles. Don't
mm,
just form your own bubbles. Hear what they are saying. They could also be saying things about your child, uncomfortable things about your child, and you are not even aware of. Just learn from other people, not just only our own bubbles.
mm, mm,
The teachers know that, oh, Africans, they are respectful, but be
mm,
involved. Let them know that you're able to speak up. Because even here, I won't even go into personal details, but a child who speaks up will be termed as confident. A parent who speaks up, they know that they can't mess with that child.
mm,
So your gentleness is not helping your child
mm,
in that aspect. Oh, don't say anything. It's not. It will rather destroy or damage that child. So
mhm,
you need to be proactive as parent. I also wanted to ask, so I don't take so much of your time. I've really taken your time, Dr. Fikayo. I also want to ask, if a parent notices that their children are not well, should they keep them at home? Should they just, keep hoping? Let's be balanced there. Okay, before you go into that, like I went to a Christian medical school where we would, in the mornings, we would pray before going to the hospital and we would treat patients well. It was balanced. That was the kind of environment I grew up in. So the way I see things, even mental health, is quite different from the way people see it. People might put stigma to it and say, oh, no, I can't, I can't call those psychiatrists. No, I'm fine. Yes, we are fine. But it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to reach out to the doctors. It's okay. If a child continues to vomit, 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 and is not treated and has lost so many fluid, the child can go on to have AKI and then kidneys can shut down. So if, looking at long duration of untreated psychosis, I would break it down. Not treating psychotic episodes on time would also result into a further breakdown. So you can talk about it. So what can we do? Who can we reach out to if our child is on, or our children, if they're unstable? What can we do? Thank you.
Yes. So I'll say for the, I think usually once people struggle with is where to get help from. Sometimes even from school, you notice your child is being, things you just change. It doesn't even have to be the child has gotten to the point where the child is breaking down. You're noticing things are different. Sometimes at school, and depends on where you are. There's some schools that will offer counseling. Just calling them to say, my child has gone through this. Just even something that is you feel like even things like there are issues in the home, or even as much as little as my child is not integrating into the system well. Having a conversation with them, is there somebody you can call? They have SEN, what we call SEN is special
Yeah.
needs, educators. So they have SEN, they have counselors in school. Or can I speak to a counselor in school? School nursing. The school nurses are one of the good places to start because they are able to, they know a bit more about what's going on. They understand the system better, they can speak to them. Sometimes the GP, the reason why I say school is because actually if a child is still in school, they're usually able to better. GP probably would sometimes even have to call their friend who's a psychiatrist to say, what should I do? So, but yeah, you at least speak to the GP. Sometimes online, searching where you live, searching for the what I call secondary health, secondary
Mm.
mental health services. So they're not necessarily, you're not coming into what we call the mental health trusts, but you have things like charity. So for example, I'm sure everybody knows about Samaritans. Not everybody, but most people know about Samaritans. So equivalent of Samaritans. So I'll give an example of what we call Childmind. Childmind is online. You can
Yeah.
reach out to them. So they have different things. You think your child is having anxiety, just Google anxiety UK. They have different things where
Mm.
you're able to read a bit more and they can give you better advice. If your child, you feel like your child has a very severe mental health problem, your child is not talking, your child is, hearing things like hearing voices or having a psychotic illness, sometimes 999, calling the ambulance, or actually if you feel the child is at risk to self or to others, you call the 999 services. Yes, sometimes it's a bit difficult to get help here. So sometimes I would say the more you make referrals, the more you make noise, then the faster you're probably being seen rather than just keeping quiet. And
Yeah.
sometimes going private. I say this is like things like which I've sometimes I that's why being a psychiatrist is I've done that for my child once where she just felt like things are not
Yeah.
really going well. Do you want to speak to someone? She's like, yeah, that's fine. Pays a
Wow.
counselor, and it wasn't too bad. I didn't pay a psychiatrist. I sorry, I didn't pay a psychologist. It was cheaper anyway. So things like a counselor, so they know
Yeah.
that you're listening to them. I think
Yeah.
with that part as well, it gives that
Mm.
level of like your mom cares enough to listen to me and to pay for someone to listen. So things like that.
Mm.
So there is help. Sometimes just reaching out to people who are in the medical field and can give you the right pathway is somewhere
Mm.
where you can seek help from.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fikayo. Maybe perhaps sometimes people are afraid their children might be taken away from them. I
Mm,
think it's one of the fears, or
yes.
like, oh,
Mm.
if their names enter into
The
the mental
system.
health records, the
Mm.
system. So, but is that true, Dr.
No,
Fikayo?
when what you said is very, very true because I had a young person who I've had to go into hospital, and the parents were I don't want to share a bit too much, but parents were really afraid. So I had to tell work that these parents have mentioned this. So for them to come to you to say that I'm worried means that they've actually thought about it and they are ready to lose that child, ready to deal with what's going on. So no, if your child has a mental health problem, I think it's when they have severe mental health problem. And when I say they enter the system, is I, they basically is that's a human right. It's a human right thing. They actually are not even going to if you're worried about papers, to be honest, that is actually is a bonus, because at that mental health, a child with a serious mental health, they're never going to send that child back, because is one of the human rights law. So I don't think they're going to. It's, I don't know where that fear comes from. No, it's actually a protective factor. Them if the child going through the mental health system. When I say protective, I mean it's a when people are afraid of their of having issues with their papers, is protected, because by law they cannot send that child back. So I don't say so, but I think it's people are just worried about getting into the system. Maybe they're going to think it's running the house. No, I think what happens is people are a bit more conscious, a bit more willing to help. It is one of having a mental health problem is actually a protective factor. The way the country is, it's not stigmatizing as Nigeria. As actually here is actually a protective factor of, okay, this child is different.
Needs help.
Yet child needs help. School by law has to help. College by law has to help. University by law has to help. So it is a protective factor rather than being worried that your child will be taken away from you. So I would say seek help rather than hide, as they say, with kafia ashibibo. No, keep seeking help actually does open doors for that child.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Fikayo. You know, the way you said it, even brought about more light. Truly, when it comes to immigration issues like parent not having legal stay, the children not having legal stay, it can also, these are all maybe examples, like let's say perhaps stress-induced psychosis, stress because the children know that their legal stay, well, they are not legally, how do I say, well, their stay is not legal. So anything can happen, and it can actually bring about breakdown. So, and I think one of the other ways to also address these issues is that if a parent knows that, okay, this is the way they want to stay abroad, look at the future of that child or the children. You can decide to go back so that you don't create unnecessary difficulties for your children. Sometimes we don't want to talk about this. And when people talk about this online, people would abuse them. But think about a child, let's say perhaps came into the UK at 16 and did not work or became illegal for like 20 years, that is 36 years, and is now beginning to pick up his life at some point, that child has become damaged throughout that journey. So we're just encouraging people. There are ways to go about immigration issues. Get lawyers. Don't just sit down there to say, oh, it's to come. No, it won't come. You have to proactively seek help. Talk to people, open up. And sometimes, there are other easier way out, like, or people can say, oh, maybe this time that you came, you've spent 10 years, you've spent 20 years. Oh, this is possible. Why not just get a lawyer? Rather than, allowing that child to live in that, mess for 10 years, for 20 years. Because so many, many times we're always just afraid. But like you said, the people who shout the more, they get help. So we are encouraging people to seek for help. Whether mental health, talk to people, seek for help. It does not diminish your faith. It does not diminish. You are only trying to help that child. Sometimes I've heard a child said, my parent did not help me on time. Sometimes people go, they want to do ADHD assessment. They don't want their children to be labeled that they have mental health. They just think ADHD is but whereas that child is having, going through that prodromal phase. But no. So do things the right way. Thank you so much, Dr. Fikayo. I would allow you to, just wrap up. Thank you so much for this precious time. We've actually been planning this since January 30th. It's like 5 months. And looking back, this May, today is the end of May, is actually Mental Health Awareness Month. So I'm glad, eventually yesterday you said we are going to have this. And I said, hey, so many things, we are all busy. Thank you so much for your time. So you can just round up for us, please.
All right, then. Okay. Oh, thank you, Sean, for for inviting me to this. It's actually been very, very. I think for me as well. This sometimes this when you listen to people talk as well, you also get a few more insights into things. So it's been very helpful.
Thank you.
One of the things I do say, or in my letters, especially to my children who are, I call them my children, but the young people I work with who are turning 18, is that there is help available. Just just seek out the help. And people we work with do enjoy the job and their role. They work with you
Mm,
to get better. So yes, please seek help. As Shoma said, speak to the doctor,
mm,
speak to the lawyer, speak to anybody in any type of form of shape or form of help you need.
mm,
Remember that immigration is hard. Immigration is hard, not just on the way it's hard on you. I think it's 10 times harder on your children. So
mm,
having that, even if it's a 1 hour, 1 hour a week, just sitting down with them to say, oh, I'm going through this. As I'm talking, I'm also recognizing that even for me and my children, I do that. And this is me despite being they're older. Some days I'm just tired. Sometimes my children are like, oh, mommy, take me to school. I'm like, nope, their school is on my way to work. But because I can get in later and I don't want to sit down in traffic for 15 minutes, I'm like, because their school is a 15-minute drive, but if I'm taking them, it's 40 minutes during school time. So I'm like, nope, I would wait till 9 o'clock, get to work at 9:20 instead of that. So some days when, or especially some days when children say, Mom, can you do this? And it's not a regular thing. Just listen. Just go with the vibe or go with the flow with them. When
mm.
your child comes out of the end and goes, Mom, can I tell you this? You might be tired, you might be irritable. Just give them that 5-10 minutes of your time. And I think most of all, let's just pray that we don't regret me bringing them into this.
Amen. Thank you so much, Dr. Fikayo Manua. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Diokamval, that's Welsh way of saying thank you. Yoruba is Eshe. English, thank you. Um, South Africans, Zimbabweans, they say Siabonga.
Mm,
Igbos will say Dalu. Awusa Nago, they so say
mm,
um, Merci, French. Spanish, gracias or gracias. Which
gracias.
other language? Thank
You
you
would know more
so
than I do.
Welsh will say Diolkame Kamsa. That's thank you for your time. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Diolkamic Helpy. Thank you so much for your help. Amsa is time. Thank you so much for your time.
All right then.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fikaya.
All right then.
Thank you.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening, everyone. We are grateful. Please act, seek for help. You're not less of a human being. Life was not created for us to live alone. We're actually created to be social beings. And that social aspect, also helps us to thrive in difficult communities, in difficult places. Help is available. Thank you. Bye. Thank you. Hold on, Dr. Fikaya.
Okay.